see how this works. Preparing to live stream. Hello and welcome. This is Online Learning in a Hurry, episode 10. And today we have a guest. Which is super exciting. It's the first time we've used YouTube live stream from Zoom, so I don't know quite how that's going to work. But I'd like to introduce my good buddy, Laurie Phipps. Laurie, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hey, hi everybody. My name's Laurie Phipps. I work for a government agency in the UK, which is called JISC, or it's not a government agency now, it's a not-for-profit. But my role is I'm the senior research lead, and I look at gaps in technology and practice and see what we can do to plug them.
Fantastic. So today, one of the reasons that I invited you in here today, Laurie, is that I really am not an expert in accessibility, and I know you've been involved in the accessibility field for, oh God, 15, 20 years now. So a question I have for you, and hopefully we can give some people maybe an opening to this discussion who've never really thought about accessibility in an online space before. What are the implications, the accessibility implications to learning online for somebody who is a new faculty member or a new teacher moving to online learning for the first time?
It's a huge question. I think the first thing that faculty members have to think about is that not all disabilities are the same. Not all people's needs are the same. So, you know, if you do one thing that's really, really accessible for one person, there's a good chance that it's not going to be really accessible for another person. So flexibility is key. I think that the really nice thing about if you're moving online right now is that whatever you do digitally, it's going to be more accessible to more of your students than not doing it.
So one of the things that we've talked a lot about is accessibility around examinations. So whether they be multiple choice examinations or whatever, can you talk to us specifically about what are some of the things that people should keep in mind in terms of that?
So keeping it simple is going to be key at the moment. When you're designing things like accessible assessments, then not everybody's going to have the same size screen. Not everybody's going to be able to have a screen. If you're going to put links in and things like that, then you have to talk about, you know, what is it you're trying to get out of the assessment. If you're using, for example, students who are using screen readers are going to take a lot longer to go through multiple choice questions than somebody who can just scan through and say, okay, there we go. So, you know, if you say I'm going to set a timed multiple choice assessment, and you've got somebody who's using a screen reader or somebody who's using a really small screen, it's going to take a lot longer for that person to actually go through and look at it. And the same with if you're going to use things like colors to express certain concepts. If you're going to do that, then there's going to be an awful lot of people that are going to struggle with those colors as well. It's not like you're in a room where you can actually talk to them about the concepts, or somebody's got a problem and they can just sort of say, hey, I need to look at this. Could you do something about it? So when you're doing assessments at distance for people with any kind of accessibility need, then you've got to think really carefully about the design. Keep it simple. Test the key principles. Don't try and get complicated with the assessments. Just test the key principles. And sometimes when it comes down to it, you may just have to say, you know what, I'm going to test what you know by getting on Skype and asking you some questions about that knowledge.
Right. I mean, in a small classroom, that's certainly something you can get done. One of the other things we were talking about was typing speed, right? So
yeah,
and I think for me, the thing that I've been trying to tell people the most is you have to understand that none of your students signed up for this either. So if you're moving from a face-to-face classroom to an online classroom, if you've got a student who's got an accessibility issue, whether that's color or whether that's psychomotor, like whatever it happens to be,
yeah,
they chose a face-to-face class the same way
yeah,
that you chose to teach a face-to-face class. And so in a normal sense, they may have explained what their challenge was in a face-to-face classroom sometime 2 months ago. Now they're just as confused too, right?
yeah, totally. The other thing is that, you know, for those students who've got very strong needs, for those students who have really, you know, you may have seen students on campus who've got an amanuensis, you know, somebody who's with them. That person may not be accessible to them now. They may just have somebody who is not used to, because this isn't somebody who has just picked a random stranger to be their amanuensis. There's a lot of training that goes through that, and that person might not be there helping them as well. So there's things like that, especially when it comes to issues around motor dexterity and things like that.
And I guess at the end of the day, the key word here is flexibility. You know,
you have to be flexible, you know, and the best, you've got an awful lot of students who are accessing an awful lot of material right now. The reality is that most of them are going to be able to access some level of that content. And for those that can't, you just have to be able to talk to them, you know, get them a message, say, hey, talk to me about your needs. Nobody wants to be excluded. And I know that there is not a single lecturer in the world that wants to exclude somebody from what they're doing. So talk to the students and say, what format do you need this in? And I said it at the beginning, if you're making something digitally available, it's already more accessible than not making it available. You know, that's been my mantra since I started doing this in 2000. And I should say it's not my major area of research now, but you know, really back then it was a case of make it digital. It's going to be more accessible. So that's the main thing. There's some obvious things. Don't just make it images. You know, text is good, you know, and make it text that the students can adjust. If you send somebody a Word document, they can increase the size of the text, they can change the color, they can change the background, things like that. It works well with screen products. The microsheet really does work well with most accessibility.
All right. So I guess flexibility, communication, right? And then try to rely on some of the people inside your organization who have some of this extended expertise. I mean, we're all in panic mode now. For many of us, we've got 2 weeks until it's many of us here, we have 2 weeks until exam time. Certainly, like in South Korea, their term just started. So I mean, it's not for everybody.
Wow.
But learn what you can, and then we'll keep trying to put resources together. I'll see if I can't find some good go-tos to add to this post for people to be able to study a little further. Thanks very much for dropping in, Laurie. I really appreciate you filling in the gaps here.
It's a pleasure to talk to you, Dave, as
Cheers.
always.